Hey guys, Matt here. Bill Mensch and Professor Ted Humphrey. My first bash at sort of interviewing two, brilliant minds at the same time. I think it went pretty well. I'm sort of, lacking in structure perhaps, but we touched on some pretty deep areas. Bill offering up his fascinating theory of embedded intelligence, which seems to kind of align fairly comfortably with a kind of maybe an idealist outlook perhaps. Ted brought some real sort of critical analysis to some of the claims and assumptions within the theory, and it was an altogether good time. And I think we're planning some more conversations going forward, potentially involving other members of Chelsoph. Get some sort of better minds in front of these guys. So that could be fun. I mean, Bill is he's a superconductor architect and creator of the 6502 processor. That is featured in just millions of pacemakers across the world, and among other various technologies. It's I'm not going to go into what it does exactly because I'll do it a disservice, but it's an extremely critical piece of microprocessing technology. So he founded the theory of embedded intelligence, which we get into. There's so much more to ask and get into with that. And there's some resources in the links below, lectures and talks, and also Bill's appearance on the Essentia Foundation, interviewed by Hans and Bernardo. He's also the CEO of the Western Design Center, and he holds 22 microprocessor patents. So, this guy's played a massive role in shaping the modern world as we see it today, and continues to do so. And he's offered up a fascinating theory about the idea that intelligence is the sort of the primitive, the sort of substance of all things, if you like. So for me, it looks like a metaphysical theory. I was pushed back a little bit for saying that it's a theory of everything, and Bill reminded me, no, it's a theory of embedded intelligence. So, just see for yourself. Ted Humphrey, I mean, Professor Ted Humphrey, he's a professor of philosophy, history, and religion, professor emeritus, I think. But he's the world-leading Kant translator, or he says one of them. He sort of modestly said that he has a competitor on this, but I think the feeling is he probably is the best. He's been asked to offer up a new edition of his translation, and there's some technical changes and so on. So this is still extremely relevant work, and of course, it suggests that he's probably an expert on Kant as well. And I actually put that question to him, and it seems that he certainly is. So he's a critical reasoner. He's a philosophy expert. So he brings some, perhaps some might say, sort of clarity or sanity to bear on some of the other ideas we delve into. But we talk about Kant, we talk about intelligence, consciousness, metaphysics, self-organization. Levin's mentioned quite a lot, and of course, theory of embedded intelligence. So I hope you enjoy this. Cheers, guys. Bye. Also meant to mention that there's a slight issue with my sound here, for which I apologise. I've done as much mixing as I can to try and get it into shape, and it's not catastrophic, but note to self. This was sort of like an external microphone, which for some reason decided to not function, so it defaulted to the laptop microphone. So I'm further away than I should have been. But I'm still audible, and I hope it doesn't ruin the experience. And thankfully, it's Bill and Ted that do most of the talking, and it certainly is an excellent adventure. I just can't help that. Sorry.
Ted and I just had a lovely introductory chat there. Just love this idea of a thought partnership with a philosopher. It's something so beautiful about that. So how are you doing anyway, Bill? How's your morning going so far?
I'm good, Matt. I've been looking forward to getting together. I'll meet you. Where are you located?
Right, so I'm in a place called Cheltenham. I don't know whether you know the UK, but it's a county called Gloucestershire. We're next to Wales. So lots of hills, and we're in a valley. So it's a beautiful place. But yeah, to answer Ted's question about Cheltenham UK philosophers, so I got this off the ground early in about, I think it was February, and it was really just to get some local people around, some of the brilliant thinkers like Mike Levin, Kastrup, people like yourselves, Donald Hoffman, and promote their work, because to be honest, a lot of the webcasts I was looking at, they're all American based. And there's not much going on in the UK. And from personal experience, nobody even knows what philosophy is. People confuse it with psychology, right? And so this is about kind of just opening people's minds a little bit locally, because I'm running out of people to talk to about this stuff. So it was kind of a personal thing, really. But a few of the big, Donald Hoffman agreed to talk to me, and so some of these big names, and it kind of got a bit bigger than I expected, and so got quite an audience now, and it's quite exciting. For me, there's nothing better than talking to brilliant minds about their ideas. So it's kind of like a hobby that actually could help others, and spread the word. Or it could be it's embedded intelligence that's decided for some reason that this needs to be done. If you talk to the mystics, they might say it's my daimon, guiding me or something. But that's why I'm doing it.
Well, yeah. So I've enjoyed immensely my conversations with Ted, and so Ted is coming from the philosophy, the history, philosophy, and religions. He taught that for like 50 years. And so then I have like this personal philosophy professor, and I've recorded 69. This would be the 70th hour recording with Ted and I conversing, but that's just the ones that we recorded. Then we've had a lot before that. So actually what you're talking about has been very enjoyable for me. And I from Ted says from time to time he's enjoyed it too. So, but I'm coming from.
I haven't said from time to time.
Anyhow, I'm right there with you. So to get on this call with you and Ted, and then recording it, I want to tell you that I use ChatGPT, and so I have custom GPT for embedded intelligence, the theory. Right. And I also have one for the 6502 microprocessor. These are for education. So we've released them to the public. What we're doing is providing information for them. And when I asked the custom GPT how my collaboration with Ted, being world-renowned, recognized translator of Kant, how that could benefit others. And then the GPT came back and says, well, I don't know anything about your collaborating with Ted Humphrey. And I'm thinking, oh yeah. So we need to do something so the GPT can use the information beneficially for those that want to tune in.
Bill, would it be okay to just talk a little bit about the 6502? Because that's inside pacemakers, isn't it? So that's literally right at this very moment, that is helping people stay alive. Yeah. And could you expand a little bit on that? Because that's amazing work.
Yeah, what happened was, I don't know, it was in the 80s, about 40 years ago. The first company to embed a microprocessor for life support was L'Oreal Pharmaceuticals in Paris. Okay. And they had I don't know if they acquired the company called ELA Medical. I don't know what ELA stands for, probably something electronic. But anyhow, they partnered with a company called Telectronics in Australia. And the guys in Australia then, I don't know, I took my boards down to anyhow. So what happens is this company in Australia, partnering with L'Oreal, ELA Medical, wanted me to design a chip for embedded for pacemakers and defibrillators. So I actually have some pacemakers and a defibrillator that was created out of 6502. So I designed the first controller for that purpose. And then I licensed about half a dozen companies on that. We still get royalties from embedded life support. So when you think about Neuralink, that's the Elon Musk now stirring up the idea that you can connect to your body, hopefully beneficially. And the benefit of hooking a 6502, as an example, to a human, that's a very personal computer. It's inside your body. It's under your skin. And you can connect to it wirelessly now. So I actually have the system that my wife Diane's mother had. It's really hard to, I can't even think about it because she's no longer with us, but I have the technology. So anyhow, that's part of the path. So what happens is I even licensed a company in West Berlin, Bioelectronica or something like that. They had a division in Portland, Oregon, I think it was. And so I worked with them to license them. This is before the wall came down. So it's a while ago. So this microprocessor connects people in a beneficial way and has been doing it for the last approximately 50 years.
But that's what a lot of your work has been directed towards, hasn't it? Improving, automating tasks for human beings. And
well, it's for embedding intelligence into things that you want you want it to do what you want it to do. So in other words, a pacemaker using a 6502, the people that I didn't design the pacemaker. There's a lot of technology goes into that, and there's just like one wire that goes to replace the pacemaker cell. So one cell in your body, if that one cell doesn't work right, then you got problems and might not pump blood at all. That the rest of that story. So in other words, just one cell replaced with the pacemaker. I took my pacemaker to I'm now calling my museum an archive. It's an archive. It's really an archive. It's got a lot of my stuff I collected over about 53 years of design.
Artifacts. Yeah.
And so what I'm doing now, I've licensed Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado, and I licensed the University of Notre Dame in Notre Dame, Indiana, South Bend, for use of my technology, all of my IP in a classroom or lab. And so now I want more students to learn about the technology, learn the history of the technology, learn how to embed intelligence into things. So the creativity of what I call our infinite embedded intelligence, you don't know what's going to happen next, because the next guy in, the next student in, next person that wants to do something, like some of these ones, Steve Jobs, Wozniak, Jobs, Musk, Bill Gates, these people that have really done some significant things with embedded intelligence technology, which is a microprocessor. The core of it is a microprocessor.
So Bill, can I ask now? So first, simple question: is it a theory of everything? So this theory of embedded intelligence, is it a metaphysical theory that gives us an explanatory model for everything?
Yeah,
it seems to be.
It is, but you're the first person that brought that comment to me. Okay. I don't think I've ever used it with Ted in all of our conversations. But usually the theory of everything, I just got, because of the Bernardo, you saw that video?
I love that. Yeah. I will link to that in the comments.
Bernardo's awesome.
He is awesome, isn't he? Yeah.
He's awesome. But he loves the 6502. I mean, he unabashedly says whatever. But you talk to him about it.
Because he's a bit of a nerd as well, isn't he, with his electronics, and he built his own computers and things like that, yeah.
Well, he's got a PhD in computer science.
Yeah.
And he's got a PhD in philosophy. So I call him a large language model. And so I have fun with that. And then he brought that up in that video.
He certainly, yeah. Bernardo GPT, yeah.
Yeah. Well, but Ted's also. What I mean by that, not to be disrespectful, what I'm saying is when you read and translate people like Kant and what Ted written some books on the nation builders of Central and South America, I'm talking about and he taught history. Well, that includes a lot of things, philosophy and religion. Religion is huge. It's not going to go away. So it's a matter of and I use my custom GPT to suggest how the theory of embedded intelligence could benefit. What's the word? I keep that word. anyhow, it means that beneficially grow together, evolve together. So we're not going to get rid of religion. I know religion, some people in religion try to kill off somebody else's religion. That World War II is part of that. And you know, these people get out of control because they think they have the best soccer team.
Bill, I just wanted to point out before we started recording, actually, and Ted, if I may, we had a good conversation about these translations. And I put the question to Ted. I said, look, if you're involved in the detail of the source material and translating it, does it follow that you become an expert on Kant as well? And I think the answer was yes, you know. And so, you know, at some point it would be great to have a separate conversation about just that, Ted, you know, to get really get under the hood with that, you know. But I think today's chat is largely about, you know, your theory of embedded intelligence, and so could we get onto that? Because I think just one of the things that struck me is that you mentioned this little wiggle, right? You said, look, imagine a place in which there are just these kind of basic entities just standing around doing nothing, right? And we're going to get bored, aren't we? And there's something about that just sounds silly, but there's a unique kind of wisdom in there somehow. And there could not be anything if it weren't for some underlying wiggling, really that sort of kickstarts this whole thing. And you're calling that intelligent. And so I've got a few questions, but please do. And if you've got any slides or anything you want to share, by all means, get them out.
I have slides online, but I tend to whatever the technology. Getting a slide. But I thought we were recording this whole thing so far.
Yeah, we are. But there was just a few minutes before you joined the call with myself and Ted. Yeah. So, so are you? Can I just ask you a straight question? Are you saying that intelligence is fundamental? Is intelligence the fundamental thing? So, do you want to talk about how you've arrived at that position and
why? So you know that Ted and I are talking about this for a long time, decades, and that he probably examined every one of my words. And then he gives me some words. When he gives me a word, I smile big time because I learn another word. Okay, coming back to it, look at, I have some technology here, and this right here is an example of a small board I sell for $18 on Amazon, I think. Anyhow, but these boards you can buy. Oh, I just stopped it. Oh, I unplugged it. Anyhow, what I was going to say is these boards, when you think about why does someone design a microprocessor? So, from a philosopher standpoint or a philosophy standpoint, you propose a question and then you look for answers for it. And you could be real creative with your answer. You could, if you read a lot like Ted has, and you translate a lot of very interesting, deep thinkers like Kant, then there's some valuable information that's in there in the words. And so what I'm saying is, think about it. You can do this. Anything I say about the theory of embedded intelligence, I'm saying you can find inside of you. You don't have to look any other place. So if you look at why did we as humanity design a microprocessor? And one of the things that you know about that is how it was used. What's in here, right? What's in this PC? What's in this? What's driving your screen there? It's a microprocessor. And why did we do this? Why did we make them small? Why did we want to make them small? So you can answer these questions for yourself. It doesn't take semiconductor engineering understanding so much as look around you. Look at your, I don't know if you have garage door openers, but look at your microwave oven. Look at all the stuff that you have around it. But there's a little microprocessor in there doing what it was designed to do. That means that it has the intelligence to be what you want it to be. So the design engineers, collectively designed a product that would benefit you. Now they're getting smarter vehicles. Now you can just call up Waymo here in Phoenix and drive to where you want it. So you see this. So I could go on and on and on. The microprocessor that started it all really was the 6502. And that's what Bernardo knows. And that's why he says to me, Bill, I'd do anything for you. So But he wanted to do, he doesn't know this yet. I didn't tell him yet. But my 32-bit, 65C 832, someone already designed it so I can actually put it on my, it took all my boards and stuff down to my archive. Anyhow, so what I'm getting at is if you think about microprocessors as processing information, and if you think about it from sensing, like we have 5 senses, you can tie a lot of different sensors onto a microprocessor's, what I call module bus, micro module bus, or a memory bus, however you want to relate to it. But so now you say, well, wow, wait a minute. With a microprocessor as a CPU, we have a lot more sensitivities to our world. So SPCA, Ted and I worked on SPCA for a while. Anyhow, sensing, processing what was sensed, communicating internally, like for instance, all of my cells, all 40 trillion or on an average, all of those have a processing element in it. Every one of the cells, they regulate their voltage between, I'm going to make the range pretty large. I think it's from 50 millivolts to 100 millivolts. Each one of our cells, and Michael Levin knows about this because he measures these things. So there's a lot of technology to sense what's going on.
Yeah, in the microtubules as well. Hameroff's microtubules point to this as well, don't they? The processing capacity of the human brain is much higher than it looks if we just base it on single neurons, right? Yeah,
exactly. And the collective of, let's say, 20 billion cells or whatever we've got between our ears, but they have average 17,000 connection. So we're talking about a massively powerful parallel analog computer. So the analog function. Yes?
Bill,
But,
you're not actually answering the question that was asked.
oh, sorry.
And I mean, the stuff you're saying.
The reason why, where I came from was from the microprocessor viewpoint perspective. And then you keep going back. Then you go, okay, so biomimicry is another thing. You go, wait a second, isn't microprocessor mimicking what we find in nature? So then you go to the cell level, which of course my 6502 was part of the technology to replace one cell in the human body, very important cell called a pacemaker cell. And then you, wait a second, then the whole organ working together as a cellular structure. And then you keep going back, then wait a second, well, what about atoms? And this was, abiotic material, meaning it's not biology, it's abiotic. So then you go, well, what about the proton? This is something I talked with Bernardo about because he worked at the CERN to break these things apart. And so when you look at why is a proton, why does it stop when it completes its structure as a proton? So Dante Loretta, his principal investigator for the samples returned from Bennu, he and I are friends. I just met with him for an hour lunch in Tucson the other day. Well, I said, so he asked me, he says, so wait a second, Bill, this is my first 15 minutes of conversation with him. He says, wait a second, Bill, are you saying everything in the universe, everything is conscious? I said, yeah. He says, what's the difference between consciousness and embedded intelligence? Well, that surprised me because he's all science. And I'm thinking consciousness is more like subjective kind of consciousness. This is where the philosophers come in, and the philosophers debate all about consciousness. When I asked the philosopher, I don't know that I ever asked Ted this, but the question is what is your definition of consciousness? What I usually get is something really close to a mythology. And so a bunch of words. And so what I'm saying is look at it from the perspective of embedded intelligence. So I said to Dante, yes, everything has to be conscious. He says, well, a part of this consciousness is self-conscious. I said, Dante, it wouldn't work unless a proton was self-conscious.
Mm.
Because if it wouldn't, it keep gathering the little wiggles that become decoherent particles, and it would be the size of a basketball. And you know that would not work. It could have tried that for a while, but I wasn't there when it was doing this. I was probably there in some part of the intelligence because of the theory. I could have been there while they were building the first protons and trying some ideas on how this would work. But that's something for philosophy. So what I'm saying
Bill,
then if you go to little wiggle, the little wiggle is a coherent wave packet.
Right. Okay.
And that's what everything's built out of.
So there's a quantum. Sorry, go on, Ted.
Well, for Bill, as I understand Bill, the term intelligence or intelligent is a primitive term. Okay, and it seems to me, and conversely, the term consciousness for most philosophers is a primitive term as well. By primitive, I mean a term that can be defined only as a function of ostension. We have to point to it.
Yeah.
So, or show others an example of it. And it seems to me, and this is not a topic Bill and I have addressed directly with one another, that one is no better off using the term consciousness than one is when one uses the term intelligence. On the other, the two terms have different references, and they point to kind of different originary sources of whatever. Bill, part, as I understand it, part of Bill's view, there are two aspects to it. At a certain point, I introduced Bill to Lucretius on the nature of things. And Lucretius was a materialist, and he attributed the origins of what we think of as the universe. He thought of it as a cosmos, and there is a difference, as a simple swerve of a particle. Okay, at a certain point, for no reason whatsoever, there was a simple swerve of a particle, and that introduced essentially a mixing function of the material elements that constitute the cosmos. As I understand it at this point, Bill is hearing this and he can controvert this. He has substituted intelligence as a primitive term with intelligence's wiggle. I don't understand quite how intelligence wiggles, but and I love the term wiggleism.
I'm a wigglist. I'm a wigglist now.
Yeah. Anyway, I've introduced some stuff here, Bill, so why don't you carry on from there?
Can I just ask a quick question before we go on to Bill? Is that okay? Because when we touched on the idea that, you know, intelligence or consciousness, you know, whichever we're talking about, is everywhere, that smacks of a sort of panpsychist metaphysic that suggests that there's agency, if you like, even at those lowest levels, as kind of perhaps Mike Levin is beginning to unveil. He's finding agency in the most basic systems. So that sort of smacks a little bit of panpsychism, but yeah, I appreciate that contribution, Ted. That's awesome. Thank you. But yeah, sorry, Bill, did you want to respond to?
Yeah, well, it's about words. It's about perspectives. If you want to use consciousness, then when I'm in a conversation with Stuart Hameroff, I haven't had a direct conversation with David Chalmers. He's the philosopher guy. He teaches philosophy, I think, at NYU in New York. But anyhow, David Chalmers and Stuart are the ones that started the Center for Consciousness Studies in Tucson at U of A about 30 years ago, 1994. Anyhow, so what I'm saying here is that what Ted is saying is, yeah, if you wanted to say, I can be in a conversation for hours if you want to use the word consciousness, I just have to do the translation. Because what I told Dante Loretta, by the way, Dante did not know Stuart. I asked him a couple of months later after he introduced me to Stuart. My wife and I went down to meet Stuart. Meet Dante in his office, and that's when I met Stuart. Later, I go, there was something about Dante's questions for me, and I said, did you know Stuart before we had the conversation about consciousness and embedded intelligence? He says, no. So he sought out Stuart after my conversation because he's realizing I'm using a different set of words. And that's what Bernardo's saying. So what I'm saying is I can translate. I can do this in real time. If you use consciousness, I could ask you a question. And that's why I came up with most of these philosophers or philosophy or the consciousness people at these conferences that I've been at. It's subjective consciousness. And when I introduce objective consciousness, that's where I'm coming from. So in other words, if you use the two different, then you're saying, okay, you're talking subjective. Okay, I'm with you.
How do you define subjective versus objective, Bill?
Okay, objective, SPCA. Objective is SPCA. Subjective is I'm bringing my consciousness to this conversation, which is about 79 years of collecting information through my five senses. So that's subjective. In other words, it's my perspective on the topic.
And also, Bernardo pointed out, he said that in some sense you're uncontaminated by sort of some of the philosophical language. So perhaps in some sense you are freer to explore ideas than getting tangled up in the words. There's that sort of an angle to this as well. Because could we talk a bit more about the theory then? And so, how it, because one of the things that struck me about it, again, is Mike Levin, because it seems to me that you're talking about an idea that we are actually a manifestation of intelligence. So this is intelligence getting stuff done, right? So when we look at all the microelectronics, really, we're continuous with that. They are just new tools for delivering whatever it is, efficiency, novelty, right? Self-reflection. It's just intelligence kind of, playing with itself almost in some sense. Is that, could you comment on that?
You're right on target. I think as far as I can understand and do my own translation of what you just said, Ted gave me another word recently. It's Gaia, Gaia.
Right.
And so that's another word that kind of goes along with what you're talking about, Mike Levin. I've done one or two recordings with Mike and I. In my last email exchange with him, I think he put in something about intelligence. So he's there. And I don't want to contaminate him. He's doing great on his own. He's with his team. He's got a lab and a team. He finds great stuff. And I'm just amazed by what he comes up with. There's the book We Are Electric by Sally Adey. Do you know that book?
I don't know that book.
You might.
Thanks for the recommendation.
We Are Electric. Mike is a prominent contributor to that book. Sally Adey works for she worked for IEEE. Anyhow, see, these rabbit holes I go down, so I get distracted. But anyhow, coming back to what you're saying is, these different perspectives, different words, panpsychism, and or whatever you're using there, I don't know those, and it's not like it just I don't know them, and so I can't speak out like some people can, like Ted and you and Bernardo. Bernardo's, you can.
He just knows everything. He knows everything.
Yeah, and that's important. That's part of what I just use my custom GPT to ask the custom GPT how the theory of embedded intelligence could benefit the teaching of humanities. It came back with some awesome stuff. I sent it to the head of the honors college, dean of the honors college at the U of A, because I'm doing some things with them. It has to do anyhow. So I can go down these rabbit holes. But what I'm saying is, when you think of intelligence, now go all the way back. Now you go back to, that's why he put before the Big Bang. What was before the Big Bang? Well, I'm saying, which Big Bang, right? Which Big Bang? There was a Big Bang that produced you, right? Two parents getting together.
Yeah.
I call that a Big Bang. Anyhow, but let's go back to...
But actually, Bill, just briefly, that reminds me of something from the Bernardo Kastrup interview. Was it Hans? He made the point that he was created by his mother, and you made the comment, which really interested me. You said, no, you created yourself.
Right.
So would you like to expand on that? Because I think that points towards sort of some of your central thinking on this.
Yeah, exactly. Well, think about it. Did a mythological character build you? In other words, if I use the word God, did God build you? Some people want to think that way. I don't think that way. I did think that way, but then I freed myself of that thinking. But that came from this theory. I wanted to lay down on a cot and just do a defrag and a virus scan. I wanted to do it just felt like I needed to lay down and just do a virus scan, because this is, I put this in there. I did this. Nobody else did it. They offered the information, but I consumed it. So now, coming back to this, look at it from the perspective of the theory of embedded intelligence. At some point, I'm going to be involved with a course at ASU here in the spring. They're going to use the theory of embedded intelligence in the course. Andrew Maynard, he was one of the 4 panelists on my workshop in 2022, where Stuart Hameroff, Dante Loretta, Ted Humphrey, and Andrew Maynard. Andrew's invited me to be part of his course in the spring. But anyhow, coming back to this, when you think it's going to be called pizza, he has pizza, slice, and a slice of future. I said, how about this? Pizza and a slice of the infinite universe. I owe you. And
love it.
Yeah. Love it. So we're each a slice of the infinite universe. And it's, what do we want to do with our slice? So that's what we're going to be talking about in the spring. Now, coming back to, if you go back to, and just imagine, I have a slide, one of my 24 slides you can find online. One is on imagination. Now, when you're a philosopher, you use a lot of imagination. And also what Ted taught me is there's a philosophical method. So what's the perspective of this philosopher? Where is he coming from? And what's the work product of his philosophy? What's the benefit of it? So Ted asked me these questions in Costa Rica one night. But anyhow, coming back to this. Now just go back. Just keep going back. Now you're at the atomic level. You're a proton and electron, and I say that they fell in love. That became hydrogen, and it grew from there. The most popular atomic structure is one proton, one electron. It's called a hydrogen. And then when they fell in love, 2 of them, interestingly enough, 2 of those fell in love with oxygen. That's the energy of attraction. So now let's go before this. Now go before the first atomic structure. Well, you know that there's the quantum, and all these quantum physicists and quantum mechanics, that's a coherent wave. That means it's vibrating. But what is it? What's it vibrating? What's in that? It's electromagnetic. But the thing that Einstein didn't realize, and I believe this is factually correct, every quantum energy has three energy forms: electric, magnetic, and gravitational. Because you're sitting in your chair, Ted's sitting in his, and I'm sitting here, and we're not flying off the chair because of gravity. That means that everything has quantum gravity in it. And they're just now trying to figure that out. They're just now figuring out that they're inside of our star could be what they call a black hole. I don't like calling it a black hole. How about the highly dense amount of gravitational energy pulling it all together? So when Einstein saw on the other side of our sun during a full eclipse, it curved around the sun. So then he had to come up with a fudge factor to make it the curvature of space-time. I'm saying, no, it's a gravitational, it's attracted to the sun. That's a high gravitational field. So that's why it curves. That's just simple idea. I'm not going into all the math. Now, coming back to it. So now if you say, okay, so what was before the quantum? What was before the dynamic energy? That's dynamic. Quanta is dynamic. It was static. Nothing was happening.
Okay.
And then intelligence was the first on the block. Something decided to matter. And Ted does nice sort of like two definitions of the same word. Intelligence decided to matter, that's meaning create matter, and also be of some significance. You're part of that. Ted's part of that. I'm part of it. So when you think about the idea that intelligence, we evolve, there's enough evidence that for some of us, evolution is real. For some people, you say, oh, no, we didn't evolve, we were whatever. And then you can go down the rabbit hole of a lot of different philosophies to come up with some other answer. But I'm saying evolution means you go from a lower energy state or a lower intelligence state to a higher intelligence state. That's part of the theory. So now if you go back to the beginning, you had to be there. You had to be there because of the conservation of intelligence. But now you don't remember when you were a baby, probably. When you were first born, you probably don't remember that. Well, you probably certainly don't remember when you helped create the first Wiggles. You were there. So I'm not making you, me, or Ted mythological. I'm just saying you had to be there. But what part of you was there? And then what you're looking at is now you had to create atomic structures, cellular structures. Now, when you have, what do you call it, molecules and things like this that are the abiotic material that has to be there. And this is where Michael Levin has to know that the abiotic material, when combined in the right, it can create life. The thing that he hasn't figured out, and this is what I said, but I don't think it was in the video that Bernardo captured. The thing that I said was, I don't want to contaminate. I want him to find this on his own. Now, if somebody publishes this comment, then that kind of screws up things because he needs to find this by himself.
Okay, so quick question, Bill. Is this testable? I mean, could we build a sort of physics around some of these ideas? So could we, for example, actually observe this phenomena in some way?
I think you could, but right now I haven't tried to figure out how to do that. But someone like Michael Levin, someone like Dante Loretta, someone like Avi Loeb, some of these people, they're in a position to figure it out. What I'm saying, going back to the theory of everything, I think the theory of everything is about physics and math. And so I don't want to steal their thunder and call it the theory of everything, but it's a theory of everything.
But there's something refreshing because you've come from an engineering background, superconductors And obviously, I love this idea of the philosophical partnership with Ted, and you're sort of checking each other, checking your homework and stuff. And that's, have you found that really helpful? Has that refined your thinking over the years? I mean, is it a better theory because of this, do you think?
Well, for me, it's helped me to know that when I talk to Ted, I see him, I trust his authority on the topics of history, philosophy, and religion. So when he gives me some information, I accept it. But then also you probably do a little fact checking. But Ted knows the business. Ted knows it. He taught it, and I've met a couple of his students, and he's really appreciated from anybody that's ever met Ted. So
would it be okay, Ted, to sort of ask if? Sorry, Bill. I was just going to ask Ted, would it be possible to hear if you do have any objections to the theory? Sort of, what are they? Are there any areas of it that you find problematic? And if so, what are they? And is there a way of approaching them?
Well, I think one of the assumptions of the theory is that like can only come from like. So Bill sees around himself intelligence, and for the moment, I'll define intelligence as the kind of behaviors that very, very complex entities, such as humans, but also other animal life, display. And that assumption that like can only come from like is a quite ancient one, kind of is quite ancient.
So intelligence all the way down.
I don't understand why intelligence and consciousness can't be a function of relative levels of complexity in the organization of an organism. So that, in fact, I don't want to see, I think that consciousness and intelligence are primitive terms. I think that they are primitive terms that refer to epiphenomena of complexity at very, very high levels. It was at a certain point along the way, I pointed out to Bill that the cash value of the theory that he was putting forward consisted of SPCA, and I actually think that going off to discover SPCA at any arbitrarily chosen level is an interesting and very likely worthwhile enterprise. You asked Bill a little while ago. The question is is your hypothesis or is your thesis falsifiable? Have you formulated the circumstances under which it might be possible to falsify these claims? And I don't think that Bill has adequately thought his way through that issue such that he could put some hypotheses or put forward a set of circumstances under which you might be able to falsify this theory. I personally am completely happy taking the Kantian position that, yes, we can get to SPCA, but having got there, you can't go any further. You just
remind me
can't.
what SPC, Ted, could you remind me what SPCA again?
Sensing, processing, communicating, and actuating.
Thank you.
Those are foundational concepts, and they're probably not well defined, but I believe that they can be well defined, and they do have immediate intuitive content to them. So, and one can think of the doing of science, for instance, as simply seeking out SPCA. It's
yeah, I like that.
So I think there are two fundamental differences in perspective between Bill and me. One, I find the view that consciousness and intelligence, what we refer to when we use those terms, are functions of complexity. I'm perfectly happy to think of them as epiphenomena that arise at a certain level, certain levels of complexity.
It's echoes of Dan Dennett.
The other foundational difference is simply, I do not think you can get beyond the bounds of the bounds of the kind of evidence that you can produce by pursuing SPCA.
Right.
And to say that somehow intelligence exists behind that or on the other side of that, whatever that may be, is to go beyond the limits of verifiability.
I suppose I suppose your metaphysical outlook would prohibit some of that in a way. So if you said that you think consciousness is epiphenomenal, so it's emergent from it is an emergent
property as opposed to a primitive property. Yes.
So it didn't predate the emergence of complex, phenomenally conscious beings like ourselves.
Yes.
It emerged from sort of chemical complexity, I guess, fundamentally. Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you. So you're a materialist then?
Yeah, I am. I suppose you could put it that way. I don't think that. I'm certainly not an immaterialist. Okay.
More precisely, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm perfectly satisfied with the universe within which we find ourselves. Perfectly happy.
Interesting stuff. Thanks, Ted. That's really interesting. I mean, that's obviously contrasts with your view, Bill, if I may say, which tends to
I do a little translation. First of all, when you use the word complexity, another word is the Mike Levin uses it, the collective. So the collective intelligence creates consciousness. See, that's where I translate what Ted's talking about. When you want to call intelligence and consciousness, there's a difference. There's a difference in the meanings of the words. I'm saying the difference, this is what Dante was his first question. What's the difference between consciousness and embedded intelligence or intelligence? I'm saying in order for something to be conscious, it has to have an embedded intelligence. If you're saying in order for something to be conscious, in order for something to be intelligence, it has to have consciousness. I don't think that works. You can think through it. You know the words better than I do. how you use the words. I'm saying if you look at what Ted's saying is the complexity is, what's that, my third law? Complexity increases with time, increases with the experience of intelligence to and from. And Ted has a problem. I may have a problem with free intelligence, because free intelligence is what he's talking about. That means it's not embedded. That means that before you decided to build yourself, Matt, you were free. Now, some people argue about free will. Well, we don't have free will. We're in a simulation. We're all these other things. I'm not in that. That I can be in that conversation, but mostly what I would be saying is, okay, you're in this other area, which has got a lot of good information in it, deep thinking in it, all this good stuff, but I'm not there. I'm here. And so when you think of it that way, then the complexity, and if you look at the Gaia, if I'm pronouncing that right, if that's the collection of all things we know on Earth, and you go, wow, that's really complicated. Yeah, definitely complicated. That's why David Chalmers would be saying it's a hard problem. I say in that video, it's not a hard problem. It's a hard problem if you just stay in the words. In your perspective as a philosopher, oh my gosh, that's rich. I love those conversations. I watch them and I go, wow. And then while I'm watching them, oh, if you just change this one word, if you just change that word, oh, there's another word. And I'm thinking, no. See, Bernardo sees that. Bernardo sees that. And he smiles and he appreciates it. And then when on that video, he says, yeah, Bill calls me a large language model. And then at some point in there, I go, Bernardo, you're a large language model. And because he's got all this information, that's a good thing. But if you look at the ChatGPT or you look at AI, I don't like AI, but I use it because it's ingrained now. It's like the Big Bang. If you want to use the Big Bang, my question is which one? But anyhow, because it's infinite. So we only can see when they put the Webb telescope up there. I think the universe, observable part of the universe, just grew by 4. So in other words, rather than 15 billion light years across or whatever it is, now 60 billion. And you go, yeah, it just got bigger. Did we get smaller? I mean,
got better spectacles, you know.
So what I'm saying is what Ted's saying is going back to something he said early on here, and that is, can I propose something that would, disprove it? What's that, invalidate it?
Falsify it.
Falsify it. Yeah, I looked at that, falsifying things. I've been thinking about that for at least 10 years, if not 15 years. I've been thinking about that, and I'm going, I want to falsify it to provide the philosophers with a reason to believe in it.
Can I just ask a quick question of Ted, if I may, just on this topic? Because I think this is really interesting, the intersection of kind of hardline, philosophical reasoning and sort of speculative metaphysics, right? So, Ted, what would it take for you? What would you need to see in order to start believing, perhaps, maybe in something like panpsychism or idea? For example, if we managed to show that there was some kind of superstructure that we're a part of, and we might even extend that to sort of planetary behavior and star systems, galaxies, and so on and so forth. If we could say that if we could find evidence of telos there in some purposive direction, I'm just interested, what would you need to see scientifically to be able to start changing your metaphysics? If that question makes any sense. So if Mike Levin managed to scientifically show there is agency in sorting algorithms, would that be enough? No?
I'd really have to understand what the term agency refers to. I mean, it's lovely to talk about agency, but I'm perfectly comfortable in a world in which matter has, as a function of its intrinsic properties, interacted with itself, such as to manifest itself in these various forms. I guess I'm very uncomfortable with any theory that reverts to some property of things that any concept I might have of agency would refer to. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
And that's just to, that's just to invoke SCOTUS to the thing. Don't multiply entities beyond absolute necessity.
So Occam's razor kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to be able to have more information from the philosophical side of things, because there's so much there. I mean, come on. It's been, thousands of years of effort going into that. One of the things, Matt, I wanted to talk about along those lines is religion. That's a topic that Ted taught. And I'm saying that the people, the theists or whatever they're called, that study religion and or create mythologies, like Joseph Campbell. I like reading Joseph Campbell. The Power of Myth, I think I'd like to say, without using too much hyperbole, if I'm using the right word, it changed my life. Power of Myth changed my life, because I didn't realize what was going on until I read that. And then you go, oh, okay. Am I creating a myth out of these words that I'm using? And I would hope not. We have enough myths. But when I talk with someone about religion, and you look at that, then religion has caused humanity to go off the rails at time. And I think I can't wait till Ted finishes updating of his Kant's translation with the next edition, because I have a feeling our decades-long discussion on this topic might have a word or two that enters into that translation. That's what I'm thinking, although I don't have any evidence that's the case. Now, what I'm getting at, if you look at it from the standpoint of previous writings, that's what I do now. I've been doing it for a while. I don't know that Ted and I ever talked about this. One of the things that I really, really have done was try to figure out how Christianity and C.S. Lewis and Mere Christianity, and then Ted brought up a new topic that I guess Kant wrote about and others wrote about. That's universal history. The universal history of things like this. You go, oh, wait a second. Let's look at who came up with the theory of embedded intelligence. And I'm claiming I can find evidence all the way back.
Right.
And so when you
that's
say,
interesting.
Right? So when you look at it from that, so then what recently...
So just briefly, do you think that contained within some of those myths are pointers towards embedded intelligence? Right, okay. Yeah. I mean, there's dotted lines all over the place here to Carl Jung and archetype, this kind of stuff. That's fascinating. So can you give me some examples of that?
I'll give you an example of Christianity: Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. The Father, this is what I think Mike Levin's going to figure out. But I don't want to give him any information here. I haven't said anything to him. But I didn't want to contaminate him. When someone else comes up with the same idea, like when somebody else came up with a microprocessor and they started looking at the 6502, then they wanted to, that's where ARM came from, ARM that's used in all these. They came to visit me after they visited Berkeley and found the RISC processor, and then they wanted me, they didn't know how to do the semiconductor I'm a semiconductor architect. That means that I pick the transistor sizes because I know where everything is on the chip and all this stuff. But that's where I was, and that's why they came to me. But
just briefly, do you know Federico Fagin's work? He's also one of the forefathers of the modern microprocessor, and he's putting a theory of everything forward as well.
Yeah, I'm not calling it the theory of everything, but no, he calls it one, capital O-N-E. I was there years ago, and I realized, no, that's a mythology. That's G-O-D, O-N-E. No, it's intelligence. You can either capitalize it or not. I'm not trying to create a myth. I'm trying to create a platform for understanding everything, but I'm not calling it the theory of everything. I'm calling it the theory of embedded intelligence. Now, coming back to this, if you use Christianity, now Ted, because he taught Christianity, he taught religions, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I call the Father, what Mike Levin's going to figure out is there is actually within intelligence, the free intelligence has some kind of a blueprint for you and me. You're a little different than me. I mean, we're one of a kind. We're unique. Our consciousness is unique. Our embedded intelligence is unique. We're a collective intelligence. That's what we are. So I would change it from we are electric. I've already talked to Sally Adey, who wrote that book. I said, we are intelligence. We are intelligence. And that's an interesting way of relating to this. So now let's go to Christianity. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. If I said, well, Holy Spirit is really energy, and Father is the model that becomes embedded in the structure of I'm a human. Or if it weren't, my Father, meaning the model in the free intelligence state, if you see my third slide, I have free intelligence, then embedded intelligence, then man-made intelligence, microprocessor. Okay, so that's how I did that. And I believe that nature can communicate to and from free intelligence. That's a whole other thing. That's an area where you probably have philosophies that do that. But now coming back to this, if I look at other models of deep thinking, and religion is deep thinking, and a lot of people have been influenced by that deep thinking, then I'm saying there's something there. And I claim it would have to have some of the basic concepts of the theory of embedded intelligence. So Christianity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, if I go, Father is the free model, free intelligence model, I am, you are, Ted is the actual son of that model. And then the energy is the spirit. And so that's how I put that.
May I just briefly ask, Ted, is there something very Platonic about this? These could be equated with sort of Platonic ideals, perhaps, and the Father, Son, Holy Ghost model. It just sounds very, very, very similar to sort of Platonism.
There are forms of Platonism that I suppose it resembles, but you have to remember that the early Christian fathers found it necessary to equate the one, which they found in both Plato and Plotinus, with God, that is, with the divine. I mean, there is a kind of interaction there, I suppose. I hadn't quite gone down the road that you were asking about. I do have a question for Bill here. Does free intelligence does free intelligence impose itself on the world as we know it, or does the world as we know it have, as it were, to reach up and pull free intelligence in?
Mm.
I think it's that graphic that I created. David Gray actually created the graphic, but I gave him the information. That's a bidirectional path. So the answer is, I think it's symbiotic. I think there's a symbiosis with free intelligence and embedded intelligence. What I call free intelligence is not embedded. But to begin with the little wiggle and the wiggleism is that wiggle is what had to be created to make it dynamic, because before that it was static. That's why I say, I don't know if you saw that in the video, what was in the video, but I'm saying we were there.
So can free intelligence want something before it's embedded?
Well, what I say, it's actually in my slide. What I say, it's the first. This is what started it all. Is intelligence wanted to know itself in an infinite number of ways. So the way to know itself, SPCA itself, it had to embed itself into things. It had to start with the little wiggle, and then it created atomic structures, and then the rest. So you collected a lot of that material to be you. So you are a massively complex collective intelligence that when you're looking at your body, that's your body's embedded collective intelligence. This is what Michael Levin would do. He would say that you're a collective intelligence. But what we added on top of that is the thing that philosophically David Chalmers is wrestling with, is that the hard problem of consciousness. I'm saying if you go down the rabbit hole of subjective consciousness, that's an infinite loop. But if you get out of that and say it's objective, then you know that the complexity of yourself has increased with every book you learn. And the Nexus book is about information networks. So one book is an information network. One of Ted's essays is an information network. It depends on how many people read the essay or the book. I'm saying, look at that from a large language model. Look at that from a machine that can blast through terabytes of information in seconds. That's amazing. And so when you do that, now you can read every one of any essay or any book you ever read. That ChatGPT can read through that in probably seconds. So I'm not trying to compete with that. I'm trying to use that tool. And so now coming back to how we evolve the concepts of religions, it's evolving the concepts of believing in something we don't know and don't understand. And for some people, they don't want to understand. They'll just go down the rabbit hole of believing. I believe anything you say. I believe everything you say. In order to do that, I want to be part of your community. So that's Bernardo saying, I'll do anything for you. Well, Bernardo, you're good just the way you are. You don't need to do anything for me. But I enjoy the conversation.
So yeah, I've got some specific questions if we could get some of those off. So it's interesting. One of the comments you made, you referenced Thomas Kuhn actually in one of your talks,
Right.
And you said that actually there's something healthy about coming into a domain of discourse and theoretical speculation when you don't have the background in it. Could you talk about that a little bit? That's quite an interesting insight.
Well, Thomas Kuhn was a postdoc, I think, at MIT. I don't know if he got his degrees from MIT, but what his project is to figure out how these revolutions happen. How does somebody new come along? I mean, how do they happen? And so you'd have to read the book. I scanned the book.
Good book. Yeah.
I found a sentence or a paragraph on page 96 or whatever I say in my slide. If you have the right edition, you can find the same words that I typed in there. What he's saying is that this fresh new view frequently is revolutionary. That's his words. I'm just using his words. And when you look at it from my perspective, Ted knows this, that I didn't read. I didn't really read for pleasure. The pleasure comes out of the information, but I don't read a book. I've read 2 chick books that is for fun. But, I want to apply the information that I read about.
Yeah.
And that's the engineer mind in me. And so when I find information that I can apply to the next thought, that works for me. But just reading something to be entertained, to let the hours zip by, that's not me. So now, coming back to this, I think what you're saying is that Thomas Kuhn, that was his project at MIT. And so then he did the research, he did the data analysis, he did all that. I haven't asked ChatGPT or my AI. I call it my EI buddy. I haven't asked my EI buddy how the theory of embedded intelligence would help us understand where revolutions come from, or revolutionaries person comes from. It'd be fun to do that. I haven't done that.
Do you think we're going through a scientific revolution at the moment? Because it seems that in all areas, neuroscience, physics, they're all beginning to talk about sort of what look like non-materialistic worldviews. I mean, you've got these high-energy physicists, abandoning space-time sort of models to be able to do better quantum physics with these amplitahedra and so on. Donald Hoffman talks about this. You've got neuroscientists saying that the world as we see it isn't real anyway. Even Anil Seth talks about even standard perception is just a controlled hallucination. So do you feel like we're going through some sort of are we moving away from a materialist worldview into something a bit more sort of woo looking? We might have said to some of these conversations would have seemed mad 30 years ago.
Well, my response to that is I think there's a lot of deep thinking going on. There's a lot of interesting people that you mentioned. There's a lot of different thinking going on. I'd say there's what's his name, John Dealey or whatever. He wrote a book that's kind of thick on the 4 ages of philosophy, for the 4 ages of understanding. I forget what the name of it is, but anyhow, we're in the 5th age, in my way of thinking. That means that what we're doing is now blending great questions that philosophers are known for. But now I think we've got the tools like AI to start digging into these deep questions. It's not who has the answer, who has the question. And so when you think of it that way, you just want other questions. And then you want to find answers to the questions. We deserve answers to all of our questions.
I love that.
That's the theory of embedded intelligence, saying, I want to know everything.
Is there some sort of Godelian limit on that? I mean, do you think this theory can advance us to a place where we can explain ourselves and give an account of our, I mean, you're already trying to, obviously, but can we explain with absolute certainty what we are?
Yeah, I think so. I'll give you, it's public right now, give you our custom AI, so you can ask these questions. I ask them, and it comes back with some very interesting things. It's obviously you want to fact check it with another AI or yourself. But if you have enough understanding of the topic, you can check to see what it came back with. But a lot of the answers it comes back with, or a lot of the words that it comes back with, are helpful. I think they're interesting. So I would say use the custom AI and see what it comes back with. But yes, I think because now in few seconds, these NVIDIA can process terabytes of information. Now, come on, that's a lot of information.
Yeah, so everything that's ever been known and recorded on the internet, they can harvest the whole thing, and then of course kind of train them in certain directions. It will know more than any single human has ever known.
Yeah,
so do you think will it introduce new areas of science and research as well? Will it?
Yeah, I think so. But basically, it's can we eliminate the fear See, that's an emotion. I just gave 2 books
Yeah.
to the honors college at the U of A yesterday. The
well,
2
people
books
feared
were
people feared the umbrella when that first came out. They thought it was the devil's work, you know. So, or the plow.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's a perspective, right?
It's a
It's
perspective.
like
It's a
you
myth. It's a
just
myth.
eliminated my job because you got a horse pulling a plow. You just eliminated my job. I was having fun digging anyhow. But coming back to this, I think what you're looking at is something that we know as our embedded intelligence, our infinite intelligence. We know we have a full spectrum. Good outcomes, if you want to call it that, bad outcomes. You know that, and that's the human. And there's a guy in Australia that just has, I get it on my Facebook. It's the integration of the innate intelligence, which is the body's intelligence, with the what you pack on top of that on your abiotic body or your biotic body that was built on abiotic material that you collected to be you. Then you put on your mental processor and you fill it with all kinds of good information. Ted's got a wealth of information that he collected, and I'm sure you did too. Mine's more focused, but you guys broad-based, and that's why I call you guys large language models. And so you're attracted to that diversity, right? I think you are. And so what happens then is if you look at that, then that conflict, this guy in Australia, it's talked about as more revolutionary than anything done before this. I mean, really, and these people are witnessing to that, and I'm saying it is really an interesting thing because what they're saying is that again, we go back to religion, Garden of Eden, the bite of the apple, which is Jobs came up with the bite of the apple of knowledge. Well, dude, now we have some technology that can really blast through this list of knowledge. And so this guy's talking about how we had an internal conflict, and that is the body, the collective intelligence of our material body and our intellect were at battle. This one's thinking it has to be like the lion and the tiger and the bear and the bull elk that needs to have 200 cow elks. That model, this guy in Australia is saying that conflict has always existed, but we have to recognize it as such. And now the intellect can manage the body. That's an interesting way of going. But that again is the embedded intelligence of the body. Now I'm talking with a person named Hannah Lee in South Africa. I got on a webinar with her. That was 2.5 hour webinar, a Zoom call that I recorded. But what happens is she is somehow connected in between the mental processing and her body's embedded intelligence.
Wow.
And this is the same thing my daughter, Alex, said to me. And when she revealed this to her husband, who was a fighter pilot, now he flies for United Airlines. He was the head of all expeditionary air forces against ISIS for a year. So he was a high-performing F-15 fighter pilot.
Right.
So when my daughter says to him, I finally got my body aligned with my mental processing because my body's saying, I just want good food, but my mind is saying I want junk food. And now I have them aligned. And when she revealed that to John Orchard, her husband, he goes, oh my gosh, I've got a split personality wife. Anyhow, so this is coming out. Two, I found a third one. Well, that's the one, Hanali, my daughter, oldest daughter, and then this guy in Australia. They're saying the same thing coming from.
Bill, really excited about that because there's something that Mike Levin talks about is this guy that had terrible eczema on his arm with necrotic tissue, and he went to what was called a hypnodermatologist. So this is a guy that gets his patients in a trance-like state and just persuades the body to heal itself, right? And this
I know that.
because as you say, there is a collective intelligence that's there, and Mike Levin's building an interface with it. In his case, he's using ion channels and bioelectricity, right? But this aromatherapist guy was able to just talk directly to the animal spirit, whatever you want to call it, and lo and behold, it healed up. It healed, and I mean, and there are scientific papers on this. This is empirically testable stuff, So, but I think interestingly, but it's telling the same story, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I look for right now. That's what I've been looking for. You can find them. Ted can find them. The theory of embedded intelligence is, I think Ted said it earlier about Lucretius and some of this. I'm saying, I think it's been talked about before. And because I didn't read Lucretius and I didn't teach it for 50 years, I'm not equipped with the understanding of these other isms. As Ted would say, you're not going to get anywhere with the isms. Now we've got a wiggleism. And
do you think? I mean, I've watched the interview with Bernardo and Hans, and it is brilliant. But do you think that your theory aligns quite nicely with metaphysical or analytic idealism? Does it sit well with it? And perhaps Ted may have some opinions as well.
Well, see, that would have to be a question you would ask the AI. If you ask the AI that, see what it comes back with. See, what I'm saying is I don't know the topic you're talking about. So for me to say, is it aligned or it isn't aligned?
I just wondered, hearing some of what Bernardo said about his worldview or his metaphysics, do you sense that there's some connection there and sort of perhaps overlap?
Yeah, I think there is. And that's what I'm saying is I think there's a lot of overlap with these different isms. And I think it's a matter you can find the remnants of this in all of those isms.
Yeah.
Why do I say that? If you look at it, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? In other words, your intelligence is what created that, or whoever created that, that's the embedded intelligence wanting to know itself.
And again, bringing back the Gaia sort of hypothesis, if you like, look at the way that we built an internet, which very much looks like a mycelial network, doesn't it? And what are they? They're communication systems across loads of different agencies. Sorry, Ted, we'll try and define agency in a minute, but and it very much looks like the human neurons in our brain, which again is a problem-solving machine. And so we're seeing all of these repeating patterns. And again, I think that fits perfectly with what you're saying. It looks like there's this fundamental sort of intelligence that's organizing itself in such a way as to advance its self-descriptive capability and pursue novelty. I mean, I'm thinking of sort of Terence McKenna and the way he talked about novelty, So yeah, that's why one of the reasons I'm so attracted to this, because it seems to be speaking my language, and I agree there seems to be a mystical component as well. And one of my previous guests, Patrick Harper, he talks about myth and the importance of knowledge. There can be more truth in myth than there is in fact, right? And that's why you're talking about religion, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that I'm not trying to defeat any of this. I want to know how my evolution of my thinking, if you want to call it, coming from the microprocessor, embedded intelligence technology, and just driving it all the way back to the beginning. And that's all I did. And you can do it yourself. I mean,
May I interject for a moment here?
Yeah.
Of course.
It seems to me that part of what we're talking about here is models and the adequacy of a given model, as a matter of fact, to capture the experienceable world, where by world I mean all of what there is. This issue of building models is, as a matter of fact, a very complex one. And one of the things that you have to remember about models is that they are a model of the thing, of whatever it is that one is modeling. And they, in that way, for that reason, stand at a distance from the modeled. And one of the things that we have to do is continually test the adequacy of a model to I hesitate to call it a reality, but one can call it the reality that is, as a matter of fact, being modeled. And I think one of the really interesting ways to understand this was the development of alternate geometries from about Euler was the first one to create a geometry that modeled a sphere, and particularly the surface of a sphere. But that set the doing of geometry on a completely new path, so that we could create, for instance, a geometry of the hand, or a geometry of a torus, of a bagel, as it were. And in the kind of language that we're using right here, it seems to me very, very difficult to test the adequacy of any arbitrarily chosen model we might want to use. Maybe that's just an extraneous comment, but it is a warning.
You're talking about sort of epistemic humility, aren't you? You're saying, well, hang on, there is this thing called epistemology, and there are limits of possible knowledge, and we just need to be careful as we approach these ideas. I get that. I think that's fair. But I think that perhaps, Bill, you do have some answers to that. It seems to me that perhaps there is a way of testing some of this.
Well, yeah, I said when Ted asked me, this is a couple of months ago, I think, or weeks ago, Ted said something about you can't really, he didn't say it this way, but you can't put your finger on intelligence. This is this model thing, right? So, but then I said to him, I'm claiming that everything I'm saying you can find inside of yourself. I think I have a book, The Inner Reaches of Outer Space, Joseph Campbell. Yeah.
But so, where is yourself though, Bill? Do you still think in terms of a physical universe, Bill, if I may ask? Is the universe there as it appears to be in a physical, or is that just what we're experiencing, and all we can really say is that there are minds?
Well, it's what we can have fun with. This is part of what meaning, right?
Yeah.
You want to nail some things down. Okay, so but I wanted to go back to the path I was just on, and that is what I said to Ted. This you can do, Matt. You can do this for yourself, and that is, what is it, and why is it? These are the questions I asked Ted, but he never gave me an answer yet. And if you don't know you have an intelligence at your core, then why did you bother reading any books? And why did you teach any students anything?
I don't remember you asking me that question.
You don't remember it. It's in an email. It's in a couple of emails. So what I'm saying is, if you want to find intelligence, it's inside of you. And my questions is why would you bother reading anything? Why would you want to get on this call? Why would you want to teach anybody anything you ever found as valuable for you? Why would you want to pass it along on history, philosophy, and religion? Why would you do that? If they didn't have intelligence and they weren't what I would call, we are intelligence. That means that we have a collective intelligence. This is Michael Levin. We have a collective intelligence to be our unique infinite self. And if you can't look in and find that, then I'd say, I'm just repeating. Why did you want to get on this call? It's your intelligence is telling you, I want to be on this call. That's how you can find it. You can find it.
I could provide a whole other account of that. Why did I want? I'd just say, I had no desire to be on this call. I was responding to a suggestion from you. Yeah, and I could say, well, this call will keep me from having completing the full review of my translation text. So why did I want to be on this call? Out of friendship, as a commitment of friendship. And yeah, I thought it would be sufficiently interesting to warrant the expenditure of my time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ted, also your other project, why would you bother responding to Hackett to update your translations of Kant? Because you want other people to understand.
Get enough in the way of there are probably two reasons, to be quite truthful, maybe three. I was complimented that they felt the translation was sufficiently important to continue its life. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Secondly, we all pursue what we call Greek immortality. I don't want my name to disappear, within the next 18 months, say. I'd like to continue on. Third, there's a pecuniary interest. Even with the advent of digital publication and the piracy of digitally published things, I have progeny that can benefit from the royalties from this translation. I mean, those are, that's why, Bill. It's a complex set of motivation.
Yeah, I think you have some great reasons to do it, but I'm saying clearly that when you wrote a sentence in two different emails that had Aristotle, Kant, and Mensch in that sentence, I'm going, do you know what you just did? And you said something along the lines, yeah, I knew what I just did.
Yeah, but let me tell you this, ChatGPT got it wrong. As a matter of fact, Bill, you have to be able to stand back and evaluate what ChatGPT sends back to you. And it doesn't always get things right.
It says on the bottom line.
Dead flat ass wrong about the relationship between you and Kant.
Yeah.
Dead wrong.
Yeah.
And it's mildly wrong,
But
enough wrong to be disturbing about you, Aristotle.
I sent it to you because you know the topics. I don't. So I sent it to you so that you could give me this feedback, and I'm getting that feedback with Matt as a witness.
glad to be of service.
I'm okay if my ChatGPT got it wrong. In fact, this is good news. But I need feedback from you because you know the topic. I don't.
Anyway,
so now,
sorry, I interjected myself in this in a very strange way. So.
No, but what I'm saying is right now, when I say specific things, then I'm giving you specific ways to find your intelligence and evidence of your intelligence by saying, look, you spent a lot of time, and like Bernardo and Matt, I'm sure I don't know Matt that well, but what I'm getting at is the only way we would have this kind of exchange is if you fed your analog neural network the information that you joyfully or hopefully you enjoyed consuming that information. So now you're giving it back to others. And when you type it up, and Hackett wants to publish this so your progenies can live a more joyful life or whatever they're going to do. I'm tying it together that says, look inside of you and you'll find your intelligence.
So if you follow that line of questioning, you will eventually, perhaps in a sort of Cartesian way, you will find, instead of uncertainty, you're suggesting we will find that the answer is, well, free intelligence?
Well, the free intelligence is something I'm working on. So in other words, I'm trying to figure out, this is why I said, I don't want to contaminate Federico. He came up with the same words. I went through one to get to intelligence because I was thinking, I'm going to call it one. Oh, we're all one. And I'm thinking, okay, but capital O-N-E, all right, so capital G-O-D. I mean, the Greeks came up with little G-O-D. We got the moon god, we got the water god, we got the sun god, we got the fire god, we got all these gods. And then someone came along and said, let's put them all into one god. And that's a new religion and whatever. So I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to say that when Mike Levin finds out that there's an intelligence that is a model for that interesting living thing, how does that fit together? I don't know. I don't know how it fits together. But we are electric. Electric is part of that solution or part of the answer. And he's using the electric fields to be able to create new life forms, but he doesn't want to be the first to do that. That's like letting the cat out of the bag. Don't want to do that. But as soon as somebody else does, I'm going to do it. What? Okay. But what I'm getting at is if you look at it from that perspective, you know there's something else there. That's the exchange between the free intelligence and the embedded form of intelligence. And that's why I call free intelligence is that intelligence that is not embedded. But when it goes back and forth like that, that's called evolution.
May I add a word here? It seems to me that free intelligence is precisely where Bill gets metaphysical. Yeah.
You would know that, but I don't, because I don't know metaphysical. And so therefore, I'm just saying that when it's not embedded, what is it? If it's not embedded, what is it?
Well,
static. It's
or maybe nothing at all. I mean, you know how this term metaphysics came into the vocabulary of the West in particular. When the scrolls of Aristotle's writings, or actually the scrolls of Aristotle's students, notes were recovered. There was this set of scrolls that the editors and organizers could not actually figure out what they were about. But they were about non-directly experienceable phenomena. And so they named them the Metaphysics, which simply meant the books about things that are not part of physics. Mm-hmm. That is, the books about things that are beyond the possibility of experience.
Mm-hmm. Which reminds me of the sort of logical positivist position, really. It just says,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can only make a statement if it either contains some sort of logical, assertion. So usually a statement of equivalence, or it has to contain empirically verifiable claims. And But is it not the case? Do you? Sorry, go on.
No, please.
I was going to say, do you not think that science seems to be getting more metaphysical?
What? Mankind?
Science seems to be getting more metaphysical than it used to be. It seems to be peeling back the layers, and if Mike Levin does find agency, we'll get to. So what do I mean by agency? I think any entity that shows volition, a plan, it has a self model, and it has a world model. I'd say that's an agent, right? And then you could have a conversation about whether those properties necessitate the presence of consciousness. I'm beginning to come around to Bill's way of thinking and say, actually, no, it necessitates the presence of intelligence. And phenomenal consciousness is something that's emerged from these little wiggles to be able to kind of, actually coordinate some of this stuff better so we can then produce microchips, which actually then advance the whole program of gaining intelligence. Maybe.
Yeah. Two comments. Science. Science has always been engaged in what I refer to as a smallerness project. That is to say, you've intuitively grasped that.
Reductionism.
No, not reductionism at all.
Right.
No, the development of technology that allows us to penetrate to yet more and more minuscule phenomena. Okay? The science we do allows us to develop the technology. The technology that we have allows us to do science at a different level, it seems to me. Anyway.
But do you think that the success of that materialist science does that say anything about the true nature of reality?
Well, I'm not entirely comfortable with calling it materialist science. But I am certainly willing to say it's a science of the phenomena.
Yeah, whatever that phenomena is.
That's my Kantian caution. What we're dealing with, and always will be dealing with, are the phenomena. It's also kind of,
What do you think about space and time then? And so, Kant suggests they were kind of modes of perception. Is that right? Modes of...
No, not modes of perception. Modes of organizing what, as a matter of fact, we apprehend. And it began with, you don't need the history of it.
I don't mind.
it began with a reflection on Leibniz's monadology, and one of the things that one of his Kant's deep realizations was that relations were not the kinds of things that could affect sensibility. That, as a matter of fact, whatever it was that affected sensibility had to be organized by the apprehender. Okay? And that space and time were the relational structures in accordance with which we organize what it is we apprehend.
So space, so something like self and other, for example, that you can see instantly that requires a relation that implies space, right? Because you have to be in a different location, right? Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Well,
and also, so actually, space. The babies learn space. They learn how to create space by the sensations of their body makes when they touch things and so on. You know. So
they organize their experience spatially.
Yeah.
Okay. But they're the imposers of the spatial relationships.
Right. Okay. Bill, what do you think of space and time? Bill, could we start with space? What is space in your view?
I think if I got what saying Kant's view of it, it's a way of it's a measurement. It's the space is really, if you look at space, it's really in 3 dimensions. It's how we orient ourselves to other things. Like right now, when this is a PC, so I'm not in space and time. Well, time is a measurement of something from past, present, and future. And so this time is another measurement. So space-time. I don't really like space-time other than I use it, but it's the 4 measurements of what there is. So it's a way of scientifically, if you want, to figure out some things about the orientation of other things. And so to me, it's helpful. Space and time is helpful to organize what there is and what we know about what there is. But coming back to something, I think the metaphysics, when you're talking about metaphysics, I'm saying that the more science gets to knowing something and understanding it are 2 different things. I had a good drinking buddy when I first got to Motorola years ago in 1971, and he said, "I don't understand all I know about that." And I'm going, what? I don't understand all I know about that. Let's have another beer. What? But he opened up my mind to, I don't understand all I know about that. And so I don't understand all Ted knows about something either. And so therefore, when I look at metaphysics, the physics is trying to chip away on the meta part. And so Mike Levin is doing that with his studies. He's chipping away at what we know about what there is, and especially biology, about living things. And when he does some things with living things, it's just fascinating. First of all, they had a question about what's going on here with the flatworms. And when you cut them up and then they become more flatworms, like, did that flatworm lives forever because you can cut it up and you cut them up and it can replicate itself. And I've been working on this is a weird thing, but I had fungus growing under my big toenail. And when I went to the podiatrist or whatever they're called to look at my toe, because I'm thinking, what can I do about this? One said, you just cut off the whole toenail and you just don't have toenail there anymore. My wife lost all of her toenails because when she was hiking down the Grand Canyon, her shoes were wrong size, I think, and she had all of her toenails removed. She has great toenails, great little toes. I love her little toes. So I know they grow back. So actually, my toe that this podiatrist said wouldn't grow back, it's grown back. it just took a year. And you go, oh my gosh. So I'm having fun with my toe because it's regenerating my toenail. And so this is where I'm saying Mike Levin is onto something. This is part of this science that when we know some of this thing, then the new way of understanding now the practical application is saying, well, dude, what the heck's going on with a cancer cell? And I asked this, and I don't have cancer. My wife had cancer. Anyhow, so what I'm saying is, why did the cancer cell decide it wanted to use up the energy from the neighboring cells, and then it's going to kill off the whole thing? Dude, you got this wrong. So now what are we going to do about these crazy cells? Well, you try to feed them something that they don't like. Maybe they give up. They say, I'm out of here. My brother went to Vietnam, got exposed to Agent Orange. Now he's dealing with that. Luckily, he met someone at Penn, University of Pennsylvania, and now they can't find in their blood, taking the blood, they can't find any evidence of cancer cells in that, but they keep giving him this injection every 2 weeks just to make sure it doesn't come back. And so this is kind of it. So this is the embedded intelligence of a rogue cell, a cell that, what was it thinking?
So it's just not communicating with its the surrounding plan, is it?
Right, and then it's got a bad intelligence that it decided it's going to build a whole bunch of buddies. This is like what we're doing here. Next week we have an election here. There's a cancer in our society. I mean, it's got bad actors. It's just, you're in Europe there was bad actors there.
So you're seeing different scaled versions of just poor sort of cooperation and
Why can't we? Yeah. Why can't we understand ourselves? Take the time to understand ourselves.
Can I just ask a straight question? Do you think a stone has intelligence? Because I was watching some Alan Watts the other day. I'm a big fan of Alan Watts, and he said people say this stone has no intelligence, and then he tapped his finger on it. So there you go, it just made a noise in response to me tapping, right? And there's kind of something in that. You could just say that we're very complex stones being tapped by our environment into this shape. So what are your thoughts on that? Can there be I guess your answer is yes, because intelligence everywhere, right?
Yeah, Diane, my wife, says the same thing. She says, I get this other stuff. Basically, she gets life, but she doesn't get the abiotic, not life, like a rock. I said, well, you're looking at it maybe from the wrong perspective. I'm looking at it from the individual atomic structures that then create these molecules, and then you have a rock that was formed from the cooling of the material that may have come from a supernova or whatever. It regurgitated the information and the matter that it got, and then so what I don't. Well, this hasn't been. There's another video that's going to come out in a week or two. But what I say in there is that actually Avi Loeb, there was somebody that interviewed Avi Loeb. He's looking for evidence of another life form from another star system. And basically I'm saying, just look in the mirror. You are intergalactic. Your material came from another galaxy, another star system. And we're, Roger Penrose thinks
we're already here,
yeah, so we're aliens. We're not from the solar system. We came to the solar system. We were in the planetary disk, but in the middle of the star. Now I'm reading something about the middle of the star might be a black hole. I think I said this earlier, but I think it's just a high concentration of gravitational And that sucked a bunch of this planetary disk. We got a star, we got some of this other stuff. All right, well, it's complicated, but let someone that knows more about it than I do. I'm just saying.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
So when you look at it from that standpoint, the rock has been formed by the pressures and the temperatures of the material. But if you go to the atomic structure that's there, I think you'll find the embedded intelligence. But if you knock on a proton, I don't think it's going to say, "Hello, Matt. Good to see you." No, it's not going to do that. It doesn't have the tools to do that.
So I just wanted to comment on that just briefly because I was chatting to Stephen Wolfram. Have you come across Stephen Wolfram's work? And I asked him for a definition of matter, and he suggested that very sort of similar. You're talking about there being a black hole at the center of the sun. Well, Stephen Wolfram suggests that actually matter itself, matter and energy, are just properties of space. Right, so for him, he's suggesting that and so basically everything for him is some sort of configuration of space according to his Ruliad, right? I mean, but it's fascinating stuff. But he's come up with some sort of finite discrete model of it, and so a pixelated kind of cellular automata, kind of computational model of it. But that seems to square with what it could be that the sun is there because of this high concept, high twisting up of space, to attract, maybe, don't know. Well, but then, obviously, if it collapses in the right way, it becomes a black hole as well. So then we're talking about a black hole from a black hole, kind of.
Well, again, we're getting lost in some of the words.
Yeah.
And when I go down some of these, or if I stay on the edge of the black hole of information, then I like to stay. I want to stay in my lane. So if I stay in my lane, then I'm not saying I know something about some of these topics that you're picking.
And the reason I mentioned them was just because I think there's some parallels with some of what's being said here. Because Wolfram suggests that things like space and time are emergent, and anyway, it's I just think there's some similar sorts of conversations going along elsewhere, in physics, neuroscience.
Well, in the opening paragraph of the theory of embedded intelligence, I mention the infinite quantities or the infinite characteristics of what is. And see, that's part of it. So in other words, it's just, if you want to change the words, that you think another set of words works better than this, I think there are other sets of words that work better for others. Like, I think this is going back to what I was saying earlier, I think you'll find evidence that the theory of embedded intelligence was dealt with in previous millennia, and when they started documenting this, then we can start finding the remnants of this earlier thinking. And I say this earlier thinking, it's like a baby, a newborn or a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old will come up with some interesting things because they are more recent connection with the infinite.
There's a term that you mentioned. You mentioned that we are a bit like bounded infinities.
Well,
could you talk a bit about that? Because that's fascinating. That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, that came from Andrew Maynard.
I'm going to interject for just a moment. I need to leave the meeting. It's been fascinating. But
Ted, it's been such a pleasure to have you, Ted. Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it.
Not at all. Thank you for having me.
So, thank you, Ted. I hope we can speak again. I hope we can speak again.
Yeah, let's do this again. So, Ted, real quick, is it okay if this goes public?
Sure.
Okay. And then, in other words, so Matt, I'd like to feed this into my GPT.
Sounds like you're having some real fun with GPT. I've increased my usage of it lately, and actually in my recent job, we've been looking at ChatGPT to automate certain tasks and processes and stuff, and it's just fantastic. It's just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I was really glad that you and Ted, that Ted wanted to join you and me, and that you wanted Ted part of this. This is the first. This is the first.
It's a first for me as well. I've never done a 2-person kind of conversation, 3-person conversation before. So, but this has been really, really good fun. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think
Ted is philosophy GPT, isn't he? I mean, he knows Kant, he knows Leibniz, he knows Plato.
He's a large language model of philosophy, history, and religion.
That is fantastic. I'd love to get into more detail about religion as well. I mean, do you want to continue this for a while?
When my wife comes home, then we're going to go to lunch, and she might be home in about 15 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, sure.
But let's do it again. Let's just plan to do this. I think the exchange is well worth it. Yeah,
I've really, really enjoyed this, and our members will have some comments and questions. And if we do it again, I perhaps come back with a bit more structure, and have some sort of more concrete questions. But it seems that to me that it seems aligned with Bernardo's thinking, right?
Well, no,
it really does, because he posits the idea of mind everywhere. Again, there's a dotted line to Mike Levin, because his whole project's called Technological Approach to Mind Everywhere. You're suggesting that there's intelligence, this kind of there's this propensity of stuff to want to do something and to evolve. And again, the evidence for that is all around us. All you've got to just do is look at evolution itself and say, well, here is evidence of intelligent problem solving. So it's almost. Now Ted's gone, I can say it almost seems undeniable to me.
Well, look at yourself. That's what I'm saying. Look at yourself.
Yeah.
And look at how you've evolved. Your body is maybe devolving. My body is devolving.
Oh yeah, I'm well over the hill.
But what I'm saying is, if you just look at yourself, your intellect has evolved. You're attracted to that. Why? This is what I was saying to Ted. Why did he go down the philosophical rabbit hole? I mean, because it's fun. It's informative. And he helped thousands of students that came into his classroom. Come on. He's got the evidence of all evidence. I mean, you got to smile, because he did that. His father wanted him to be an engineer.
Right, okay.
And so now he decided he was going to go down the path of a philosopher, a historian, and a theist, or whatever he would call himself. So to me, he's covered the whole gamut.
Yeah, a polymath, a true, yeah. And it's funny how he's ended up working alongside an engineer, so that.
An engineer. The interesting thing is, if you haven't done this, on Wikipedia, Google systems engineering. Systems engineering is fascinating. I took a course in that to get my BS in electrical engineering at the University of Arizona. That professor was one of the pioneers of systems engineering. I don't know how close he was to the beginning of it all, but he was teaching from his textbook that he was writing. And so what I'm saying, just systems, I didn't know this until earlier this year. So in other words, I took the course, but I didn't know what it was. But I was the only one to get an A in the course. But somehow I was attracted to the topic of systems engineering. So what we're talking about right now is a grand scale of systems engineering, the grandest scale of systems engineering. So that's how this, I think, fits together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I first got I had a ZX Spectrum home computer. I think it was, I hate it, but you remember Sinclair?
Yeah.
And my tape recorder broke, so I ended up just entering the code myself and playing. That's how I learned programming, But I was always fascinated by seeing things moving on the screen, and what is a creature, and can we represent that, or can I build a creature? And then I had the puzzling idea: is this a creature? If it's got memory, it's got decision making. I think my answer now is no, it isn't, because it's just on distributed circuit boards, and it's just the way it looks to me. It looks coherent, but really it's just calculations going on within circuitry. But I'm not sure.
I call it embedded intelligence technology, and what you're seeing on the screen is how it was designed, was created to communicate with you on the screen. If it makes some noise, then that uses another one of your senses. It's your hearing. So when you do something like, anyhow, you see what I'm saying. In other words, you're coming from the same spot that I came from. And that is, you understood how to put the software in the machine to do what you wanted it to do. That's all this is. That's all
Yeah.
that I'm talking about. So when you think of it that way, then going from embedded intelligence technology all the way to the little wiggle, you got it.
Mm. I think sometimes scientists and actually a lot of philosophers, because a lot of philosophers I know are quite materialist and, you know, they're all scientistic in a way. And they get scared by words like purpose and, you know, and things like that. And so yeah. And there seems to be a lot of hesitancy to kind of even embrace some of these ideas because it's too grand almost. You know, and it reminds that, you know, the word metaphysics, as suggested earlier, is a bit of a dirty word.
Well, some of these things, it's because I think the theory of embedded intelligence will release them from whatever's holding them back.
Wow. So there's a personal development aspect to this as well.
Oh, totally. I wrote, oh, you didn't.
I didn't know this.
Wrote it. I wrote it because I'm saying we have to have an objective understanding of what there is. And when we stay in the mythological state, we'll have wars.
Mm.
But then we have to deal with someone that's just mean-intended. I want to take what you have, but you can't have what I have because my intelligence is mine. I'm sorry, but you can't get there. And if you kill me, it'll become free again. And, oh, well, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I would hope good things.
That free intelligence will be redeployed on other embodiments?
Well, then okay, so if you go down the rabbit hole of the Hindu religion, you'll find similar things.
You will. And this is what we've been talking about within a couple of the philosophy groups that I'm a member of. And it's exactly what you said earlier. You said, I'm not trying to disprove anyone. I'm looking for that unifying. I'm looking for the language that they are all speaking. And, and as you suggested, you gave the good example of the Bible and said, actually, here are some metaphors which point towards this idea of embedded intelligence. And that's fascinating. I think that's really awesome.
I think you'll find this remnants of this because it's the evolution of the intelligence. This is what's in that third slide online. It's the graphic that says we can bidirectionally, when my cells die, what's going to happen with that embedded intelligence? It doesn't have a choice to become free again. But what will that do? I don't know. But what I'm saying is, if you say it's going to go to heaven, I'm going to go to heaven, I'm saying I am in heaven every moment of every day. But if you use the word heaven, you're going to be using a whole lot of other connected words.
Yeah.
And it's going to take you down a different rabbit hole.
Whereas you're not drawing any distinction. You're just saying, no, the whole thing is this is all the behavior of embodied intelligence. And there is no distinction between different stages, and you can't get more enlightened. You can't get any more enlightened, presumably, can we?
No. Someone once asked me, how did I become enlightened? I go, oh, I'm enlightened? You think I'm enlightened?
It's like the Zen Buddhist who asked for he said, "Oh, make me one with everything." To the hot dog vendor, that's right.
But so when you say you're connected to everything, it's different than you're one with everything. If you're saying you're connected to everything, that's the origin of intelligence. So my last slide has some philosophical questions for you. Is the speed of intelligence infinite? So this quantum entanglement, if you're saying when you sense that this one has a spin up or down or right or wrong or 1 or 0, the other one immediately. What do you mean by immediate? So in other words, if you say it's immediately, if you sense this is a 1 or 0 and this is a 1, that's quantum mechanics. Is that factually correct? If it is, how long did it take for this one to become a 1 when this one was sensed to be a 0? I'm saying I saw a paper recently on trying to measure that. But if I said, wait a second, if it is infinite, I've just thrown this out, philosophical question for you. we can ask ChatGPT. But if you say that if, like Federico says, we're all one, that means that we're connected to everything else in the universe intellectually or intelligently. If you say the intelligence began as an infinite intelligence, I'm just a piece of that. I'm just a really, really small piece of that. But then I collected a lot more intelligence when I built my body. And then I'm building my mind on top of my body. And then, you know, the microtubule thing that Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, I'm saying that's a storage mechanism, just like in these things, the dynamic RAM. Unless you refresh
technology. It's technology.
Yeah, it's just our body's technology to record things. So if I said, I'm an analog, so you can't duplicate me. You can't make a copy of me. I can make, if I would have, when we recorded this, like what you did, that's a digital twin. So in other words, that's an hour, 2 hour digital twin of this part of it. But you didn't get the rest of my body functions and what my digestive system was doing. There's a lot of stuff you didn't get with this digital twin. But if I said it's the video or the visual and auditory digital twin, I could record the next new baby on the block, just have one of these with it. So this would be an audio and visual digital twin of where the camera was painted, focused. So you see, you could do this. But then the next question, philosophically, you would ask, do you want to go back to where you're 1 years old with the digital twin? Do you want to see what you were doing there? And I think, like Ted was saying earlier about he was on this video, but then he wasn't doing this other update of his right? What I'm saying is
his sacrifice.
I'd rather have the next experience than go back to where I was. I mean, okay, so I was there, but I'm here now, and I enjoy being here right now, this moment. The only moment we ever have, it's the moment of now. It's the moment of now. And so we string maybe 100 years of those moments, and then we're gone. No, we're not gone. We're free to begin again. And that would come from the Hindu reincarnation thing, and that's a whole nother topic. But I say that's the model. Somebody came up with that idea. Let's not throw it out. Let's use it.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, for thousands of years before the materialist paradigm, people believed in spirits, the agency of rivers, streams, bushes, and so on. And now some of these modern findings saying, well, actually, maybe these shamans were right.
Well, and they were right. That's why I don't want to throw them out. I'm saying let's use them for the value that they are. Now, if you're saying, I was raised Lutheran, so that means that Martin Luther was protesting what was going on in the Vatican, in the Catholic faith at the highest level. And so I asked ChatGPT, what was Martin Luther protesting? It came back with some really good stuff.
I was raised a Catholic myself.
Well, and right down the hall is a wonderful Jewish woman. Her name's Sue, and she brought to lunch. This is the first time maybe we had lunch. We lived here about 3 years. I'm on a retirement community on Arizona State University's campus. I'm on the 15th floor. So there are professors here. There's student performing music and stuff for us, and we have 4 restaurants in the building. So we never really have to go outside. But the Sue has this big old book she's holding. It's probably about that thick, and it's a bigger book. It's not the small book. The book was published in 1999. It's like 25 years ago. And the name of the book is something like Hitler's Pope. Hitler's Pope. Wait a second. Some of what's going on here in the United States right now, we're going to be voting. I already voted. My wife voted. A lot of people voted early. But anyhow, that's what Trump has figured out. Because if you look at mythology and you teach mythology, if we taught kids until they're 12 that Santa Claus is real, at some point, the Santa Claus, they're going to say, dude, I know that Santa Claus is not real. It's dad or it's mom dressed up like dad or whatever. So there's a bishop, it's a 4.5-minute video on John Templeton, and it's this bishop, it's about the three people that were deeply involved in the Catholic faith or Christianity, and saying that evidence that there's no God. That 4.5-minute video, what he ends with is basically there is no guy with a gray beard in the sky, and he's saying you're going to have to let go of that, just like you let Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And then he follows it with, we haven't done our followers full service of what is intended. So in other words, they are on the edge of being able to say, we need to reveal this is a mythology. And then you can benefit. There's great songs, there's great art. I don't want to lose any of that. I'm not suggesting that at all. But then you actually can be informing all of those followers that we gave you a great starting point. Now it's time to evolve out of that understanding to an even more powerful. That's what I'm doing. That's why I wrote this. That's why I wrote the theory of embedded intelligence.
Treat it. It is myth. If you treat it as myth, then it can guide you as myth. There are truths within it, but it's not a scientific. It's not. They can't use it for evidence of the beginning of the universe or the creation myth, or they can't. And so, in a way, science needs to say, okay, we've got to stop being such bastards and scientistic and deny the existence of anything that isn't within our materialist framework. And religion needs to say, okay, we need to rein it back a little bit and say, let's stop being so fundamental. Let's stop being so dogmatic about this stuff. And we can't, training people to believe this dogmatic. Both sides have to make some sacrifices, don't they? If they can work together, and I think they can.
What I did, and I sent it to Ted. I said, how can the theory of embedded intelligence benefit the symbiotic relationship of science and religion? You do it. You do it yourself. See what it comes back with. What it's really going to say is like metaphysics. Does metaphysics become smaller when we chip away at it because it becomes physics? Or does it stay the same size because it's infinite? Well, that's called evolution.
Yeah.
So in other words, you can play with this with your own philosophical methods to figure it out. But I'm saying just use the theory to help you figure out what you want to figure out. I'm not.
You're quite practical. Again, it reminds you you're an engineer. You approach things practically, and that comes through in some of your reasoning. And I think a lot of our sort of listeners will find that very refreshing. Because I think sometimes philosophers can get tangled, as you suggested, get tangled up in definitions and obsessing about the constraints of this, that, and the other. Whereas actually, you're free to go ahead in an uncontaminated way.
Well, but we're all free to do that.
True.
But in 1743, this is about when Kant did his writings. Ben Franklin founded the American Philosophical Society, the first learned society in America. And there was only one purpose for his founding that, and that's for the promotion of useful knowledge. That's all I'm doing. I'm just giving you some information.
Isn't it the case? I think most of the founding fathers were philosophers. Isn't that the case?
Well, I'm wondering, and this is something Ted could help me with. Did those founding members of society, called founding fathers sometimes, but I think there were mothers there too. I don't want to make it. I think we need them all. But what I'm saying is, I'm wondering how much of their writing of the Constitution came out of Kant's writing, because that existed before they wrote the Constitution. His writings existed. And the reason why Hackett asked Ted to update his translations is because Henry Kissinger passed away this past year. Henry Kissinger got his PhD from Harvard, and it had something to do with Kant. And rather than Henry Kissinger translating Kant, Henry Kissinger used Ted Humphrey's translation.
Wow.
So that's why they say, hey, didn't we get to know something over the last 40 years when you wrote this? And that's what he's doing. And he's telling me he's really likes what he's written. And so that's why I don't know if there's one word in there that he changed because of our conversations over about 3 decades. But
if there is, frame it.
yeah, well, he'd have to point it out because I wouldn't be able to find it.
Oh, Ted, sorry, Bill. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I think I might have to call it a night because it's been quite a long day working on data analytics and stuff. And but I really hope we can come back together again and sort of have some further discussions. I mean, I could take some questions from our members, and some of them are very rigorous thinkers that remind me of Ted and won't give you an inch.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm not looking for inches. But I'm saying, let's do this again. Maybe invite 1 or 2 or whatever numbers of your members there, and we can have Ted back on. I think he really liked this.
Yeah. Let's continue the debate. Yeah.
Yeah, I call it a conversation, right?
Yeah, conversation.
Sharing your ideas, they might be different. You tried to bring that out with Ted.
Well, that's been brilliant today because part of it has been about listening to your fantastic theory, which is just a standalone, interesting piece on its own. I could spend all day on that. But then Ted's obviously raised some objections, and I've maybe challenged Ted a little bit. Be interested to see what Ted would need to see. What is it that he would need to see in order to start having a bit more belief in this stuff? That's fascinating. Yeah. But I'm nowhere near. I'm not the best philosopher in our group. I mean, I'm just the one who does the interview.
Okay.
But I'm not bad. I've got some training, but yeah, there will be deeper and more complex intelligences out there than me.
And so I'd be happy to be on a conversation with them, with you, and you take it where you want to take it, but I'm always available.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Bill. It's an absolute honor and privilege to talk to you. And yeah, it's wonderful.
Likewise, it's an honor and privilege for me to have this conversation with you.